So I guess we'll take a look at where we're at. We did essentially this strip of shadow here. So that there all the way up. So today we are going to finish up this section. And then we're probably going to be moving west, which my thumb is too big, west. To this section over here, we have another shadow. There is some more subtle stuff as we go. Let me turn this a little bit. As we turn the corner on this side of the chair here, a little bit more nuance there. Things need to make sure that they look like they go around it rather than just being flat across. So we got certainly have a lot to do on this chair still. So on my palette, I don't really know what I'm mixing yet. Let's take a look at the detail here. We have this yellow section, the blue section, and we're going to be putting darks into this. I think this yellow section we're going to be using a dark green, and for the blue section a dark blue. But to be honest, there's not a whole lot going on here. So this will probably go pretty fast, I think. I do need to also kind of fix the shadow, maybe a little bit. I guess we'll see. We're going to start with the blue, and to mix green, we're obviously going to mix in some yellow. Do I want my warm? I'm going to go with my warm yellow because I want to first off mix a green, but at the same time desaturate a little bit because we don't want a super bright green. If we wanted to make a bright green, our best option would be cerulean and that yellow there. I think this is looking a little blue, so let's add a little bit more. We may have to add a little bit of our pool yellow just to make it more green rather than a blue orange neutral. It's kind of tough to say. I think this might be pretty good. Let's put it on the panel, see how it goes. All right, so let's get some medium here. I don't know what happened, but like a half an hour before the stream, my throat started to feel a little weird. I don't know if, knock on wood, I hope I'm not getting sick. It's not quite sore, just a little weird. So if I'm quiet, or I just punched my mic, if I'm quiet or I sound weird or I'm raspy or something, I do apologize. Been drinking a ton of water to get rid of it, but it has not gone away yet. So, all right, we got our green. Let's put this on this panel. So, most of the darks are up here, and we actually do have a bit of a highlight as well. So actually, this is kind of messed up. So let me see what this looks like if I put it there. It's okay. So we have some fixing to do here. I'm gonna lay this in here where I know it's essentially correct, but then we've got to mix a warm dark color for the shadow and really kind of fix the angle of that line because it is not what we need. So unfortunately, I'm back in repair mode already. So we're going to blur this a little bit, that as well as it goes up. So back to my palette. really just going to work with this by itself for the first few minutes here. Right now we can essentially just block this in where we have the lines already drawn in from earlier. Oh, the song. Oh. Apparently I've clicked on something else since I started my music. So, get on out. There we go. There we go. Oh, my phone light wants the day off. I'm in. Sounds like it. The worst thing is that like I can't just turn it on again after it goes out. It's just like, nope, not gonna happen. Bye, bitch. So that's very frustrating, but again, I'll deal. So back at it. Not completely happy with the situation right now because this angle is just so off and it's going to complicate everything. However, I have had to do more involved repairs in the past few streams, so I'm not too worried about it. I also need to not block what I'm doing, which I've found in the past few weeks is way harder than you may think. So this needs to essentially go away completely almost. There we go. And to be honest, this is gonna fade into this, so this is what the line actually should be. So this is not going to be an easy fix. I'm just gonna like draw this in real quick. It's gotta be like that. Ugh, that I'm gonna have to mix like that color and block this off. Actually, maybe I can pull this off with just one simple dark purple-ish color. So let's do this. First, I gotta get this green off of here, and I think I'm going to make my standard shadow color that I've been using. So we are going to, what have I been using for that shadow color? I think I've been mixing equal parts there. And then my burnt umber. Oh my goodness, get on my palette knife. There we go. Now this is probably still too intense. A little more burnt umber. We'll give this a shot. I don't know if this is gonna do the job, but it's at least a start. So Well, that is something. Is it what I hoped it would be? Maybe. Maybe. It's a little thin. Okay, this is gonna be difficult. So I think I need to do something drastic and take that original green color off, because that is what's making that harsh line there. Paint this back in. Getting a weird situation here where it's thinner in this one area, so I just need to put more paint on in that area. And now this should work without too much crazy fixing. So we'll give that a shot. Horrified of putting a highlight in this shadow area, but I do think it has to be done. I don't know what's going on here. Why is this not coming up? Well, we're gonna have to paint over them. We're gonna see how this goes. So I'm just going to use pure white, very thin. I'm basically breaking my rule that highlights should always be opaque and shadows should always be transparent. So there's that. Plus, it's just a weird situation in general, so this could be fun. That's way too thin. So what I'm gonna do is, so when I say too thin, I just mean too fluid. I do want it to be actually even more thin than that. I need less on my brush. That's really what happened there. So I need to make sure I don't have a big old chunk on my brush. We're gonna lay in this highlight as best we can without completely blocking the camera. So I do need to adjust this a little bit so that looks natural. So I am still horrified. This is not exactly what I had imagined. But I think it's okay. Could be much worse. So I'm gonna go back to my green color here and try to work around this and make this look more natural in general. So I'm actually going to switch Let's try this out. Let's see how this looks. Right now I'm really just scumbling with hardly any paint on my brush because I do want this to be very subtle, and I'm just going to essentially mush it around with my finger right after I put it down. So there we go. I just need the interaction between the highlight and this subtle shadow be a little more subtle. Okay. And this needs to go all the way up. All right. That could have been way worse. Cool. All right, so that does not look awful, which is great. Always a plus. To be honest, there's not a whole lot going in here. I am going to outline this with a little bit of my dark purple mixture. I might add a little bit of extra blue. So I already have the purple mixture on here, so I'm going to grab some of this and add in a little extra blue. I want it to be more of a bluish purple because we're in this bluish area. And this is going to be the shadow color here. I'm also going to add a little bit more burnt umber because we just added some pure ultramarine blue, which is going to make the color very, very, very intense compared to what we started with. So we do need to dial it back with a little bit of burnt umber. So I need to make sure my brush is clean, and it is. I'm going to pull this out, and in theory it should be blue, which it is not. So I think I added too much burnt umber. Let's just mix a little more blue into this. I'm using this no matter what, so it better be good. It's okay. It will do. So let's do this outline. So we get all the way to the edge, so it looks natural. You can see that this fold actually displaces the design a little bit. I have a little bit of a shadow here. I think this song is near too. I did download a handful of new ones. Back to this blue. All right, so this, to be honest, we've done most of this already. I think I just need to make it a bit darker in some areas. This needs to be more dramatic, like that. And it can kind of come all the way across, just not quite as pronounced. Okay, and then as we go down here, you have a bit of an outline here. A little bit of a gradient. And this down here is actually a different color. So we're just going to section that off a little bit right there. And I do feel like this may need to be little darker in here. So I think I'm going to mix a very, very thin burnt umber, and we're going to glaze over that entire yellow section because right now it is very, very bright, and I'm not feeling it. So I'm actually going to switch to this brush, and I'm just going to load it right here off of my burnt umber. No need to mix anything. The key here is getting the right amount of transparency, which this does seem to be pretty good. I also need to make sure I don't mess anything else up, like these shadows here or the highlight. But what I ultimately want to do is make that highlight more obvious while making this entire section a little bit darker in general. Because this is shadow. This whole section is in shadow, I should say. So that does seem pretty good. I'm actually going to carry it over into the blue as well. All right. Now this makes me think that this highlight is no longer necessary. The white itself, I should say, because we just made everything else darker. So now we can take off this white and it should be lighter than everything else. Now, that does not work in practice quite as much as it should have in theory. And it's mostly because this part here just is like overpainted. So I do need to make sure that gets cleared up. And some of these other sections that are already a little dark, but that should be okay. I also want to clean up the bottom area. So I'm back to this purple mixture that was my shadow color. I'm just going to take some of this on the side. I don't need a whole lot. And I want this to kind of come to a point at the bottom, as well as fade in a little bit. So it's not just like round at the bottom, like it comes out of the shadow rather than being on top of it, I guess you could say. That makes sense. So I do think that this section is done. Let's take a step back here. That does still look very, very bright for a shadow. The yellow I'm looking at, this section here looks very, very bright. So I think I may need to get more dramatic with the burnt umber. And holy cow, look at that. Look at that glare. My goodness. Definitely can't take too many steps back with this camera. I mean, to be fair, it's not just the camera. It is my lighting situation. It is almost impossible to get this perfect. But I'm not going to complain too much. So I am going to make a slightly darker burnt umber glaze. And now we're going to go back and bring this down even more. Now, actually, now that I think about it, I think a better option is going to be to use the purple, because the purple will also act as, you know, not just make it darker, but act as the complement and actually bring it down in terms of intensity. So we're going to do the same thing we were doing with the burnt umber, but with this purple. So let's see how this looks. And this makes sense too, because this is the shadow color, and we're combining this shadow color with the local color of the chair. Now this is kind of thick, so I will probably be lifting quite a bit of this off. I also want to make sure that it looks like this green part is actually darker. I don't want it to be the same value where in theory it should be a darker section. The same thing over here. Be careful not to mess up what's already here. That seems to be pretty damn good. You have to be careful of overworking this entire area. That would not be good. When you overwork a section, it becomes very obvious, and sometimes just needs to be completely scraped off. Right now I'm trying to fill some of these tiny little gaps. And let's also make this a little darker too, now that we're here. And I can clean up this line, make sure that's a little straighter. This starting to look way, way better and more shadow-like. So now I'm going to take a step back again. Ignore the glare. Now I'm thinking that highlight is just too much. It's kind of just crazy. Now I can't really do too much about that. I need to do something about this. I'm calling it a highlight, but it's not really a highlight. It's just the lightest part in the shadow. So I'm thinking that first, whenever I get in this situation where I think it looks wrong, you know, I always go back, look at what I'm doing, make sure I'm not making stuff up, and I can absolutely say that this should not be as light as it is. And in fact, it's not actually any lighter than the surrounding area. The only difference is that it is surrounded by darker colors, which makes it look like it's actually lighter. So let me get this back up here so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to do a few things. First, I am going to fill in that highlight with this color. That's number one. But then I need to make sure that the dark surrounding areas shape that properly. So now I'm going back to this dark green mixture that I was using before. going to be using a combination of this green and purple for this. So I need to make sure that this clearly defines the edges, as well as this. Okay, so that's working. Now we're going to go back to the purple here. And this has to continue this line. There we go. So now, just need to make sure this edge isn't hard. And if I would have listened to myself from the beginning when I said, I'm only going to paint darks into this area and that I should never paint a highlight back into a shadow, if I would have just listened to that from the beginning, I would have saved myself, I don't know, what, 15, 20 minutes or so? But I didn't. So I just gotta deal with that. So there we are. So I think that is infinitely better. Awesome. Okay, so now we have some decisions to make because we have finished this area that, if you remember, I was very concerned about. And good God, look at the color balance on that. Siri, shut up. I don't know why Siri has been so bad lately. Whew, too many distractions. So why does this look like crap? I think it's probably because I moved it. Let's try and get the color balance fixed. I think I need to block that. Maybe? Still looks like crap, but that's okay. So now we are going to move over and we are going to do some of this. Now, I can't super easily move my detail camera over because my taburet is in the way. I can potentially go somewhere over here. Ugh. I apologize for making you guys sick. Let's get this up higher. It's as high as it'll go. And there we are. So there's something weird here. It looks like there's a word. And that's just how it ended up getting painted. Looks like it says like G-O-W, Gow. I don't know. But yes, we'll be painting more flowers. This section up here is not too bad. There is a lot of like wrinkles coming out this way from the elbow. And I do have to accommodate the shadow, which you can see outlined in white temporarily, so I know where it is. But other than that, it seems like it's more of the style that the earlier sections were, which I don't know if you can see, but here, over here, more of just like standard flower and leaves and stems kind of thing. So we're kind of back to that. No more super complex mega flowers like under her arm. So I'm wondering if I want to start with the shadow or not. I already have this pretty perfect shadow color right there mixed already. But the thing is that this whole shadow area, let me get a brush. It works as a much better pointer than my finger or thumb. I just put my hand in the wet part. Anyway, I'll go from here so it's not blocking the light. This almost entire area here where the shadow is on top of this flower. So it's not actually the color of the chair, which we would then be using that purple for. Like, for example, here. So, actually, I'm looking at that. It seems a bit too much. So, I'm kind of intimidated. Maybe we start up here and work down. I think that's probably the best option because we can kind of tackle the beginnings of these wrinkles here before we even get into the shadow, but we will have to kind of combine wrinkles and shadow there. That will be interesting. But I could also say no thank you to this shadow. And I could, I'm not going to do it now, but I will have to, if I were to do this, I'd have to change the setup, but I could start on this flower. That's going to be super complex, a lot of detail, but I do think it'll be relatively straightforward. I'm just going to shut up and start doing something. So I'm just going to start working up here. If we find out that, you know, this is pain in the ass and I'm feeling lazy on my day off, then we won't do that. But for now, we're going to start up here, work down. So we need I think we're going to need a bluish, kind of like the shadow color that I've been using for some of the other wrinkles, not necessarily the purple that we identified that cat shadow was going to be, but something more like this. That's way too much of that. So did my music stop? Or is it just between songs? I think my music stopped. I have like days worth of lo-fi, easy listening music. And it decides to stop whenever it feels like it. I don't know why. It must be in the hoots with the light on my phone camera. Oh, so many distractions today. Anyway, let's get back to it. So we're mixing a blue shadow color, so we're going to knock this back with some orange. I mean, it's not technically orange, it is my warm yellow, but it's close enough to complementary color. And that was too much of the yellow, as per usual. And then we come back in with some ultramarine blue to bring it back to blue. And I think that's pretty good. So we're going to be using this in this upper section here. So I'm just going to shut up and start doing stuff. So this is a section where I don't necessarily understand what I'm looking at and painting, so I kind of have to just wing it. I mean, it appears to be, it's also way too thin. So I'm gonna go back, make sure there's more paint on my brush and less medium. And does seem to be better. So I think it's just a pretty simple kind of fold in the fabric. It is actually, there is a light section on the outside. So I don't want to go all the way to the edge with this. This comes all the way down. Like this. To make sure I get up to the edge, which for some reason is proving to be way more difficult than I expected it to be. There we go. Okay. So we want to make sure we blend this left edge. Keep this relatively dark here. I think that's a bit more pronounced than it should be, so we're not going to have it come back in quite so dramatically. So this difficulty I'm having here going up to the edge is specifically from masking. So this is a masked edge. I use tape, and what happens when you do that is that when it's masked off and you're painting, you know, above or below the tape, it kind of makes a little like mountain where the tape is, and then that can interfere with the way your paint interacts with your panel or your canvas, depending on what you're working on, and it can be a headache, but it's not a huge deal. I do want to make sure that this is a little thicker. There we go. This song's got to go. Okay, so Raquel's asking, so there's two types of yellow? So, yes and no, in a sense. That's something that I haven't really talked about, and that's color temperature. It is kind of another quality of color. I've talked about color before, where, you know, there's three properties of color: hue, saturation, value. Temperature is a quality of color, but it falls under the hue section. So let's take a look at whoa, what happened here? Palette, but I didn't move my camera. So sorry about that. That's probably been all wonky this whole time. But let's take a look at my color wheel here. And so yellow, for example, you'll see like pure yellow is at the top somewhere there, kind of. And that's kind of pure yellow there in circle number 1. Now, if you go to number 2, the yellow is still yellow. In this case, it's chartreuse. Fancy. But it's becoming a cool yellow. And why is it becoming cool? Because it's moving towards blue, which is just generally a cool color. Whereas if you go to 24 in the other direction and it goes to golden yellow, that's becoming warmer. So why is it becoming warmer? Because it's moving towards red, which is an inherently warm color. So that's kind of what that means with when I say two types of yellow. So if we look at the palette without palette knife, or without the color wheel, this is kind of It's not quite, but it's kind of more of just one, but in my mind, it's more of two. It's a cooler yellow, closer to green than the alternative, which is this one, which is closer to red. Now, or orange, I should say, if we're talking about secondary colors. So that one is probably more of like 23 orange yellow rather than 24, which 24 would be the ideal. But for me, I've just become so accustomed to using this color. I do like having something that is closer to orange. So that's what I mean when I say two different yellows. Just means warm and cool. You'll see the same with the reds. We have a warm red, and that one is kind of more in like the 20 circle. You'll see on the left there, orange, red. And then you have just pure red at 19, but then you also have like a blue red, or even further into, you know, closer to blue. And that is this color here. That's more of like that blue red, almost purple. And now blue is a little complicated because typically blue is the color that you refer to as cool, just in general. So how do you have a warm blue and a cool blue? And to be honest, this is where things are very, what's the word I'm looking for? Doesn't quite make sense either way you think about it. So you could say, oh yeah, there's blue at 11, right? And the kind of towards the bottom. And if you move towards green, you're moving towards like yellow, which is a warm color. In terms of primaries, we're skipping green and going to yellow. But in the other direction, we're going towards red and we're skipping past purple. Now, typically purple and green are both considered like cool colors. So which one do you call your warm blue and which one do you call your cool blue? Now, you could say that, yeah, purple is warmer than green, but I think it could go either way. So for this setup, we have this ultramarine blue, which is more towards purple, and the cerulean blue, which is more towards green. And you could argue either way, which one is the warm, which one's the cool. It can go either way. I don't know the answer there. Maybe there is a finite answer, a correct answer to that. But for me, there's just no way to make a blue warm. And it's a very, very weird situation, but you do want to have two versions, one that is closer to purple and one that is closer to, in this case, yellow. You know, it's looping around in the wheel. So yeah, that's kind of what I mean by two types of yellow. I really hope that was your question and I didn't just go on a super long tangent for no reason. So if that didn't answer your question, please let me know. So here on the detail camera, it looks like the color balance did kind of sort itself out, which is good. So we put this down kind of just a green, maybe a little too green now that I'm looking at it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that. Not entirely, we're just going to take most of it off. And I'm going to take this color, but I'm going to work a little more blue into it. Make it a little less green. Because to be honest, I don't think this is like part of a plant or anything like that. I think it is just a straight up shadow on the chair. So This is still greenish. That's okay. But we just need less green. So now that my palette is not all wonky and it's back to working again, let's try this, see how it goes. It's very, very similar, but you know what? I'm not gonna worry about it too much. Do want to blur this left edge. I do want to blur the right edge as well, just not quite as much. There we go. Now there's also a subtle part of the pattern right here. Now, I do want to make sure that this doesn't look like it's some kind of weird shadow interacting with that fold. So we do need to get kind of drastic there in terms of the angle of the top part of it. And I do want it to come all the way down. Again, I have to struggle with this edge, but that's okay. So, might be getting a bit too picky with this section, but still not terribly happy with it. But I think we just have to say enough is enough and move on. There's also something going on here as well. I'm going to use the same color. It's kind of just part of the pattern, interacts right here. I apologize for the shadow. Okay. There is something about this that I just straight up do not like. But I don't know if it's worth the time. You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to go in with a little bit of white on that top edge. I think that's what I'm not liking about this. So I'm going to have a little bit of white. I'm going to keep it pretty opaque. And I'm just going to think some of the drawn part is there, and that's what's bothering me the most. Okay. I think we're just gonna stick with that for now. All right, so next we need some greens. So the interesting thing is that maybe this is not actually wrinkles. I say that because this stem going across here does not actually like vary at all, like you would expect if these were wrinkles. Now there is absolutely a wrinkle here, and you'll see the top part of it, how it interacts with the silhouette of the chair. So that comes down kind of like that. That absolutely does interfere with kind of the pattern and what's going on. But here, these lines kind of radiating out don't interfere with that. So I don't actually think that they are a part of the, I don't think they're wrinkles. So this is a weird situation to be in. As always, I recommend knowing. You want to know what you're painting before you actually paint it. And I haven't had that luxury in some situations around this chair. My reference material doesn't have enough pixels to really thoroughly grasp what's going on, and that can be a really big problem. For example, my very first painting stream, I was painting the rivets down here in the bottom of the chair. Now, if you saw that, awesome, you're the best. But most likely, a lot of you have not. So I want to kind of reiterate the biggest problem that I had there drawing those rivets is that there were so many. And it's very easy to just say, okay, circle, 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 rivet, 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 rivet. And when you do that, things look too perfectly lined up. They have similar shadows. They're interacting with the fabric the same way. And it looks contrived. It looks like you made it up in your brain and put it there rather than kind of recreating what is actually there on that chair. And this is a similar situation where if I don't know what this is, if I don't know if it's a wrinkle or if it's just part of the pattern, then I can't paint it the right way. And I risk making everything flat, which in this situation, at least in this style, would be bad. I mean, if everything else is represented pretty realistically and then all of a sudden there's just one part of the chair that just looks flat, like it doesn't wrap around, it's a huge problem. So that's why I'm kind of stressing out so much about this section up here, because it could make or break the chair in general. Yeah, it's a tiny little section, but it's also a complex and important section because there's a shadow here. It's going to be extremely important to make sure that the arm looks like it has volume and that it's blocking light and that the light is being blocked properly and it's interacting with the fabric in the same way. So you have to know what you're painting. You absolutely have to. For example, if you're in art school, you always have to paint skeletons. Maybe not paint, but at least draw. So if you're drawing a skeleton, you have to deal with ribs, right? And ribs can be a pain. You have, I don't know, I probably should know from anatomy, but you have a certain number of ribs, and if you are drawing them and you don't think to count them, you don't think to understand, what are the ones that, directly connect, what are the ones that have to like come back up to connect. If you don't pay any attention to that, then it's certainly not going to end up in your drawing or your painting, and your drawing or painting suffers. I would even argue that even if you are trying to have a looser style, maybe more of an impressionistic style, you still need to know what you're doing, because you can't get the impression of something that's coming from like in your vision. You can't get something from reality and get an impression of it if it's coming from your brain. You're just getting an impression of your brain, which maybe that's what you want to do as well, but moral of the story is know what you're drawing or painting before you put anything down. If you can, if you're drawing from life, if you have a still life, literally pick it up, look at it, understand it, so that when you put it down and step away, you're at your easel or your drawing board or whatever you're doing, and you see some weird, curve or some weird interaction with another item you're painting, you know what it is, and you can say, oh, that's that weird curve there. That's probably one of the most important pieces of advice that I could give you if you're an artist beginning with oil or just painting or drawing in general. My God, that is so important. And that's why when I don't know what this is, because it's from a photo and I can't recreate it, that's when I get mega stressed. So this is going to be a very tough section here. So, all right. So to do this, we need a green. We need lots of green. Now actually, we're gonna need some brown, but we've already got that covered. So I need to get this off of my palette knife. And I need my usual green. And to make my usual green, we have yellow, we have blue. We're going to make a yellowish green. And we need to desaturate this yellowish green. To do that, we need the opposite color. The opposite color of green is Bueller. All right, I'm not going to stand here for much longer. No takers. Yellow? No! You need yellow to make green, so it can't be on the opposite side of the color wheel. Orange? Opposite of green? Closer though. Closer. It's red. When you're memorizing your color wheel and your opposite colors, there's 3 pairs of colors to remember. Red and green, think Christmas. Blue and orange, think purple. It's red. It's red. So red and green, blue and orange, and yellow and purple. And if you know those, you don't need to memorize color wheels, placements, and where things are or how they relate. You know that, blue and red makes purple. That stuff's the easy part. It's the opposites that are the ones you really need to come up with a way to remember, so that when you're using them, you don't have to look at your color wheel. Although, if you look at your color wheel, as long as you understand the theory behind it, it's okay. So, you guys get you're safe this time, but don't let it happen again. So, we need a red, and I'm going to use this one here. Key is to not make it too neutral so that it starts moving towards red instead of green, but we do need more than that. Okay, so that's looking okay. So, I need to make sure this brush is clean. Okay, so now we are going to lay this in here. Okay, and then this appears to come in like a branch, and then there's maybe some leaves coming off of it. It's really hard to tell. So I need to reload my brush. This may be a little too yellow. So I think I'm not going to lift this off completely, but I am going to take most of it off, and I'm going to go back to my mixture and just add a little bit of blue. Hopefully not too much. Tiny, 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 tiny little bit. I don't even know if you can see that. That wasn't quite enough. This song needs to go. Even a little bit more. I think that is pretty good. There we are. So, it's a very subtle difference, but it is important that this looks green and it reads as a stem or a leaf and not like one of the flowers. So, you can see the difference that just adding that tiny little bit of blue made. Actually, I should not be doing that. There's definitely not that much empty space between these. So just need to pull that over a little bit further. Right? So now I'm gonna lift this again. Now it should be much more green than yellow. It's still, I wouldn't say it's green, but it's doing the job. So now we're going to go back. I think we're going to use this green color that we mixed earlier. We're going to try this. Now this is going to kind of break the convention that I've set throughout this, which all the other stems and leaves and stuff have used my burnt umber as a shadow color, but I want to kind of pull this more towards green. So let's see how this looks with this green mixture we have here. So Havoc says, I love that chair, dude. Glad to hear it, Havoc. I kind of wish I could give you a better view of it. Let's see if let's see how this works. I'm gonna get some mega glare, but I should be able to get the chair pretty well. Let's bump this down a little bit. There's, I guess, most of it. It's coming along. It's been, I don't even know how many months at this point, but I'm certainly happy with it. Especially this area in here, I was super worried about. And it turned out okay. So far, no catastrophes. Did have to wipe a few sections, but nothing that couldn't be fixed. So I'm working up here. color balance on the camera isn't great, but I just have to deal with that. So back to using this green. I don't know if this is going to work. We may have to wipe the whole damn thing. If that's the case, there are worse things. This is super, super dark. I think it's going to work though. I just needed to get a lot of it out of the brush. So there we are. So we not only added this darker value, we also made it look more green and less yellow, which was the ultimate goal. Cool. Now the interesting thing is that this should not be here at all. So I'm gonna mix a chair color, hopefully to match this pretty perfectly. And I actually have multiple areas. Down here you can see there's some paint there and there, which I just noticed now that those as well, kind of while I'm at it. I'm very lucky that I found those at the same time. So this should not be here, only this. We're gonna mix that chair color. So to mix the chair color, first thing we need to do is have a clean palette knife. And what's nice is that we've already mixed this, which we've been using as like a dark version of the chair color. So we can just take this, kind of make its own little pile, and then mix a ton of white into it. And we're probably going to be really close with just this. We'll just have to tweak it. Maybe we'll have to add a little more white. Maybe we'll have to add a little more of this color here. But we're going to give this a shot. Now, my initial reaction is that this is too light, but I've been wrong before. So let's see how this goes. So I'm just going to pull it out. I did have a little bit of this darker color on my brush. Doesn't look like it's affected it too much, which is pretty good. So let's just give it a shot. So here, this is kind of an interesting situation because I have to kind of simulate the brush work underneath as well, or at least kind of match the direction. Now, it is covering it up. I do think it is too much white. So we're just going to take a tiny, tiny little bit of this, maybe a little bit more. And see how this goes. I do need it to be pretty opaque, so I'm not going to use a ton of medium in my mixture, because it can't be both transparent and cover this at the same time. So I have to kind of like expand not just that little line, but I have to expand outwards to make sure that it looks natural and it doesn't just look like a patch. And now I'm kind of taking some of the paint off rather than putting it on, so I want to go back in and make sure I have more paint and less medium. There we go. And these types of things, sometimes you just have to play a little bit until you get it just right. And it's not completely gone, but it's okay. Next, I'm going to move on to this here. Hopefully this mixture still works for this section of the chair, which I don't know if it does. This might, maybe I just put that on. Maybe it's still wet. Huh. Yeah. So that's actually still kind of wet. That's why it was influencing this color that I was putting down. So there's not a whole lot I can do here. I'm just going to leave it alone. Luckily, I was able to wipe most of that off. It did kind of tint the color a little bit there, but not a big deal. This, however, I don't think I'm quite that lucky. So we're going to try to patch this up. Must have gotten on my brush. There's still like a warm, almost like an orangish color that's influencing that. So I'm just going to wipe my brush, start over. Huh. So kind of running out of this color, so I'm going to just go pure white. Mix some of this into it. Try and find a good medium. See if we can get this covered. I mean, I think it's better. It's not looking great. But for some reason, there's something warm that's influencing this, and it could be that color that's there. So I think for now, I'm not going to spread it around and make it even more obvious. We're just going to leave that one there for now. I think that'll be okay. And this, I'm going to try and clean up a little bit. I think they were both dry to the touch, but they were wet enough so that when I put paint into them, it still mixed in. So I was getting like a warmer color than the chair. And that is always a pain. It would have been much easier if those colors had been completely cured, but I don't know when this happened. I haven't touched this part of the painting in quite a while. So I'm surprised that they're not completely cured, but it happens. So I'm just going to take my mineral spirits and I'm just going to dunk a corner of this paper towel in here and try and clean this up. Now, sometimes you can get lucky and you can take off what you're trying to cover up as well. And no luck there, but this did clean up rather nicely. And we're back to that blue color. And you can tell usually by looking at the paper towel if you've done anything at all. Sometimes it just is like a placebo or something, but in this case we did take something off and we're good to go. So we didn't completely solve this problem. We do still have this little spot here. This is completely gone, which is good. Completely came off. So that was absolutely still wet. So next is this line. Let me grab my brush here. This line that comes in is actually part of this leaf. This here is kind of like the stem of a leaf, and it comes in and it continues all the way over. So it's a huge, huge leaf. And it actually doesn't get quite as skinny as it looks. That makes me realize I do want this to not be quite at this angle. Maybe something more like that. And that's going to be a little bit better. But then this comes down underneath it, and this, everything below this leaf is this leaf here, this big boy right here. So I think the best thing to do now is to do this section here. It's very similar treatment as that there. It interacts with the top of this leaf here, so it's actually stopping somewhere around there. So we already have the color mixed. I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And make sure you don't have something else. So I'm just going to make sure I get all that white out of there, because definitely don't want it looking cloudy or milky or anything like that. So I've wiped my brush. Sometimes white will still stay in your brush, and you can see it's a little cloudier than it was, but it's going to be so minute that we don't need to worry about it too much. So now I'm getting a little shaky and I'm not sure why. I haven't had any caffeine since Saturday morning. Still trying to cut down on caffeine. It's no fun. I don't like it, but my body does. It's kind of amazing how much better I feel after not drinking like 3 cups of coffee every day. But I mean, I guess everything should be in moderation, right? So going back to this green color, we want to do the same thing we did before, where we make it more green as we work in these darks. So it's there. This here goes across. So for whatever reason, I'm taking way more off in this little area than I did in that previous section. Not sure what the reasoning is there. We're just going to work back into it. This dark color again. We're going to keep it right like that. I think the next logical thing to do here is to do this leaf and go all the way across. Now, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen today. It's not quite 9 o'clock yet. I am cutting it a little early, but I do have to get ready to get back to work tomorrow morning, and would like to get to bed, get some rest, and a great long weekend. So thanks for watching, everybody. So thank you all. If you're in the US, I hope you had a great holiday, great Labor Day. If you're not in the US, I hope you had a great day. in general, or if it's morning for you, have a great day. And I will be back here tomorrow. We'll be tackling this leaf right here, and it'll be another great stream. So thank you all for sticking around. Thanks for watching, for following. You're all great. Have a good day. Good night. Later.